Okay, welcome to today's session. You've all notified me that the sign-in register has been done, so thank you very much for that. And I have already notified you that the recording has just started. So, as always, just a quick recap on current situation. Obviously, we know that we're going to be here for at least another 3 weeks, so just make sure you're keeping that social distancing up, staying home as much as possible. And if you are having to go out, then make sure obviously you are avoiding people and keep washing those hands. So today's session is we're back on maths and we are going to look at conversions. So there's various different aspects of conversions which could come up in quite a number of different questions. As I've already said to you guys before, it won't be a question that will come up on its own. It'll be a question, it'll be part of a question in another kind of, well, amongst other topics. So for example, you may have to convert distances when you're looking at areas and volumes. So it won't be as simple as work out the area of this square, work out the area of this rectangle. They'll probably give you some measurements in centimeters and some in meters. So you'll have to do a bit of both. Okay. However, so yeah, we've touched on them in other sessions, but I just wanted to make sure that you're clear on what sort of conversions that you're going to be asked to do, what they are, and what ones you actually need to know, and those that you don't. So there's not loads that you need to know, but there's obviously certain ones that will definitely come up and you definitely need to know. So I would definitely say this is one of the main things that you guys probably need to try and find your own way of remembering, learning, whether that's writing them out loads and loads and loads of times so it's reoccurring and it just kind of sticks in your head, whether that's putting sticky notes over over the house, over the room, especially before your exams, because you'll need to know that. As long as you can remember it up until that point where your exam starts, you've obviously got your scrap paper so you can make notes and you can jot down anything that, so if you are someone that is generally quite forgetful and you think that you're going to forget one particular one or a few of them, then make sure you look at your notes before you go into the exam, and then as soon as the exam starts, then write down anything that you can remember based on the conversions, and definitely the ones that you feel that you will forget. So converting units of measure, there's several ones that we're going to look at. So to convert units accurately, you need to learn and remember them. So that's basically what we're going to go through today, is the ones that you need to learn and remember. I am going to touch on another one that you don't need to remember, but it's just really, because it comes up quite a lot in the exam, I want us to touch on it anyway. Okay, so bear with me 2 seconds. Thanks, Alex. Right, shared screen hasn't come through, so let's try that again. Is that better? Hopefully you can now see. Yeah, excellent. Well done. So, okay, so an example is, so you may have to convert minutes to hours. So you're going to need to know that there are 60 minutes in an hour. You might have to convert meters to millimeters. So you're going to need to know that there's 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. Okay, so you kind of need to know how to go backwards and forwards between the different units and measures. So the first one we're going to look at is time. So obviously how long it takes to do something. Your length. This is obviously how the distance, how long something is. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're working out areas, perimeters, volumes, then they're 9 times out of 10 going to give you either different calculations to get you to convert, or they'll give you the measurements in one unit, and you'll have to convert your, and then I want the answer in a different unit, so you'll have to convert at some point somewhere. There might be some conversions on weight, so how heavy something is. So they like to use cooking questions quite a lot, so measurements on weighing like ingredients out, because it's quite functional, and you might not do a lot of cooking yet, but you certainly will do in the future. And capacity, so the amount that something will hold. So they like to throw in questions about drinks and organising parties, and how much people, the amounts that people are going to have in their drinks, or how much to order and things. Okay. So those 4 are the 4 that you will need to know. You need to remember the units and the measurements, because they will not give you those conversions on the exam. However, currency, obviously, for the simple fact it varies. It varies daily. Currency goes up, obviously, with the different exchanging rates. So that's always variable, and that's not something that you'll be expected to remember. And they will give you a key to follow. So there will be a conversion, and they will give that in the question if it comes up. But we will still touch on it, just so you're happy with how to kind of convert. So first of all, looking at time. So obviously there's 60 seconds in 1 minute, 60 minutes in 1 hour, and there's 24 hours in a day. That is basically all you're going to need to know. Hopefully you already know that. So to convert your seconds, minutes, and hours, you multiply or divide by 60. And to convert your days and hours, you're going to multiply or divide by 24. So to convert your hours and minutes to minutes, because you need to go one way or the other. If there's a question in there that has hours and minutes in it, you need to decide what way you're going to go. So the most obvious one is to convert it all into minutes, and then at the end, if it then wants how long it's going to take, you can then, if you know how many minutes you've got, you can divide that by 60, and that'll tell you how many hours. Okay, so for example, 1 hour 45 minutes is equal to 60 minutes and 45 minutes. Okay, so if you then add them up, it gives you 105 minutes. So the reason I've put the calculator picture on there is because the most important thing that you need to remember is don't fall into the trap of using time on the calculator. So, for example, you wouldn't want to be putting 1.45 divided by 60 into the calculator, because it's not going to give you the correct answer. You need to break it down, and you need to show when you're working out just a kind of a sensible explanation of how you've worked that out. So as it is on the screen, if you needed to change 1 hour 45 minutes, they're going to know that you know that 1 hour is 60 minutes. So you would put 1 hour equals 60 minutes plus your 45 minutes, and then you can show your calculation 60 plus 45 on the calculator. Okay, so yeah, calculator will not know time, so just make sure that you convert it into your minutes, and then it's easier for you. So then 3 hours and 15 minutes, you would then do your 3 times 60, because you know that there's 60 minutes in an hour, so you've got 3 lots of 60 for your 3 hours, and then you plus on your 15 minutes, so you then end up with your 195. Okay, so make sure that you use your calculator sensibly, and just remember that you can't just be adding your hours and minutes up on your calculator. You have to convert them into minutes, and like I've done on the screen, that's exactly how you'll write it in your working out box, so I'll be able to see exactly what you've done. Okay, so moving on to length. Length is probably the hardest one in terms of the amount of what you need to remember, but hopefully it should be the most relatable. It should be the most relatable in terms of like your job role and what you do. You would have covered it loads at school. So you've obviously got your smallest, so your millimeters, your centimeters, your meters, and your kilometers. So when you were at school, you would have had your long rulers, they would have been in millimeters and centimeters. So that is my first tip for you guys, is to try and visualize rulers. So the one that you had at school, roughly, it was 30 centimeters long, which is kind of roughly almost the width of most kind of laptops, there or thereabouts. So if you think of that visually, that was your ruler. Your meter, hopefully it's something that you can visualize. It was that really thin wooden stick that you would have had at school. And you're probably, if you kind of try and visualize it, if you maybe put your arms out and just widen them past your, probably about 30 centimeters either way of your body, you're roughly looking at 1 centimeter, that meter stick. If you then visualize your rulers, well, there's roughly 3 of them in there, so that gives you an indication of roughly how many rulers there are in that 1 meter stick. It's a good way of measuring it, and kilometers is obviously the biggest one. So if you're someone that's quite keen on running and sports, then a lot of people will, register running in kilometers. So there's obviously a lot of things going around, like social media at the moment. So like running 3K, 5K, 10K. So it's again, it is something that you can visualize in that kilometers is the really long distance that you're running. Okay, so it's then figuring out what these differences are. Okay, so the first thing to remember is that they'll always only go up in tens, hundreds, and thousands. Okay, it's always that round number, 10, 100, or 1,000. So you've got 3 out of a chance of getting it right, but that's the importance of you trying to remember it and visualize it. Okay, so for example, there is 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. So again, think back to that little ruler. The centimeter is very, very small, probably like the width of your, say, thumbnail, and then you've got 10 millimeters in there as well. Okay, you then got your 100 centimeters in 1 meter, so that's where you then visualize 3 lots of those rulers that you had at school. 3 lots of those is 90. Well, what's closest to 90? Hopefully from rounding the other day, you're going to get to 100. So it's not going to be 10, because you know that your 30 centimeter ruler is obviously more than that already. So the closest, not obviously 1,000. So you should be able to then work out, using that visual aspect, that there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter stick. And then as you get bigger, you've obviously then got 1,000 meters in a kilometer. Okay, so to convert from one unit to another, you need to multiply or divide by 10, 100, or 1,000. And even if you're not sure whether you need to multiply or divide, if you go back to those visualizations, you should be able to work it out logically. And as long as you know which ones are smaller and which ones are bigger, again, you should be able to work it out logically. Okay, so to convert millimeters to centimeters, you divide by 10. If you convert in centimeters to millimeters, you multiply by 10. So it's just figuring out what way you're going. Okay, so you're then looking at centimeters to meters, you divide by 100, or meters to centimeters, you multiply by 100. And the same when it then comes to meters to kilometers, you're dividing by 1,000, or kilometers to meters, you are multiplying by 1,000. So most important thing, tens, hundreds, thousands. Use your visualization. Remember which ones are the biggest and which ones are the smallest. So looking at example, if we're going to convert 20 centimeters to millimeters, what am I going to do? So can anyone figure that out? You don't necessarily need to write the answer. You can just tell me what I'm going to do. Am I going to multiply or divide? And am I going to go by 10, 100, or 1,000? What am I going to do? Okay, so I'm going centimeters to millimeters. So centimeters to millimeters, I should be multiplying. So if you're looking at the examples, multiplying by 10. Okay, so just remember to go the right way. Okay, so 20 centimeters times 10 is going to give me 200 millimeters. Okay, so I'm just going to show you kind of a little bit more visually, because obviously there's a lot of numbers in there. There's a lot going backwards and forwards. So it's a bit easier if I just show you kind of visually how that works. There's a lot of stuff on this video that's irrelevant, so I am going to start it and move it on, just because it's basically they go through what we've just gone through anyway. But I just wanted to see you kind of let you guys see it visually. So bear with me 2 seconds whilst we get it started, and then I'll move it on.
We just need to create.
Okay.
Where one of our dimensions in the question is equal to 500 centimeters, and another dimension in that question is listed as 23 meters. Now, it's very difficult when we have questions like this to carry on with them both in different types of units. So it's not easily relatable. So what we have to do to start off approaching that style of question is actually convert one of the numbers into the same unit as the other one. And it makes things a lot more straightforward afterwards. It doesn't actually matter which one you convert, so we could convert the 500 to centimeters to meters, or we could change the 23 meters into centimeters. For the purposes of the example, I'm going to change the 500 centimeters across into meters. So we're going to convert this top one. Now if we go back to our diagram, we need to find the section that tells us how to convert centimeters to meters. So that is actually this one, and that's dividing by 100. So that's what we need to do. We're just going to do 500 centimeters divided by 100, and that should give us our answer in meters. So I'll bring up the calculator to do this, as you're always allowed to use one. So 500 divided by 100. So that gives you an answer of 5, and obviously that's going to be 5 meters. So we have it, 500 centimeters is equivalent to 5 meters. We'll do one more. This one, we're going to have 2,300 millimeters, and also 15 meters. Now this time, I've purposely made it so these have more than one division between them, so it's not just a case of going from millimeters to centimeters or centimeters to meters. They're actually two sizes of unit away from each other. So we're going to have to do 2 calculations to solve this one. So we'll break it down. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter which one you change, but I'm just going to go with the top one, 2,300 millimeters. We're going to convert that into meters. So we'll go back to our diagram again to see what we need to do first. Let's say we can break this into 2 steps. So first of all, it makes sense to change it from millimeters to centimeters, and that above tells us is divide by 10. So that's what we're going to do first. 2,300 divided by 10. A quick rule for this is actually, if you divide anything by 10, it's just the same as knocking a 0 off it. But as I say, you've always got the calculator there if you're not 100% sure. So it's 230. So that's going to become 230 centimeters. So obviously that's your first step. Your second one is we now need to change that 230 centimeters across to meters to finish with. Let's go back to the other diagram again. And again, it's the one we used before. Centimeters across to meters is dividing by 100. So we know that we need to do 230 divided by 100 to change our answer into meters. So we can get that up again. 230 is already up there. Divide by 100. So that gives you 2.3. So it's going to be 2.3 meters. And that's your final answer. So like I say, it's just 2 steps for doing that one, as the 2 divisions away from each other. You won't necessarily get a question where it specifically asks you to change millimetres to metres, for example. That's why I mentioned earlier there'd be part of an overall question using dimensions where they'd encourage you to think that through for yourself. So if you ever see two different units, think I need to make them the same before I can do anything else. And that's the end of this tutorial on converting units of measure.
Okay, so that's my first tip for you guys, is that diagram there is probably the most easiest way that you are going to remember how to get from one to the other. Okay, so it's nice and clear, it's nice and easy, and it's just kind of getting your head round. Obviously, when you are going from millimeters to centimeters, in your head you're probably thinking, I need to times that because I'm going bigger. But remember, although millimeters is the smallest measurement, it's got the most in it. So that's where you divide. Okay, so as you're going up in the distances, in terms of millimeters, centimeters, meters, kilometers, you're dividing. And then as you're coming back down, you're then times in. So it's just, if you think logically, it kind of goes against the rules, because that's where I sometimes get confused, because I think, well, surely if I'm going bigger, I'm going to times it. But it's not. You're dividing it, because you're seeing how many millimeters are in those centimeters. Okay, so one thing I would definitely do is draw that diagram and keep drawing it and keep drawing it, or have it somewhere where you can visually see it all the time, so it just sinks in and you literally see that diagram all the time, because that you can't go wrong with that. You will then make sure you get 100% on anything that comes up in the exam. And also, just something that did come up in there, when obviously there wasn't a specific question for the example that he was using, so he just decided to choose which way he was going to convert. If you're confused as to which way you should convert, I would look at the answer. So read the whole question and have a look at the answer, because it will say give your answer in this. So it's basically whatever they want your answer in. So they want it in millimeters or they want it in centimeters. And then you can obviously go, that's probably the easiest way, is to then convert it into whatever they want the answer in. However, if in your head it makes more sense to convert into what you know, fine, just make sure you do that final. So work it with millimeters or centimeters or whatever it is it's asking you, but then just make sure you do that final conversion at the end. You will still pick up the marks, so there's no right or wrong answer what way you convert, as long as you give that answer in the correct units that that's asked. Okay, so moving on to weight. So weight's a bit more of an easier one, because there's literally two to remember. So as I said earlier, they like to throw in a cooking question, grams and kilograms. That's all you need to remember. So there are 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. Okay, so as long as you can remember that, you're sorted if any cooking questions come up. If there's anything to do with like ounces and stuff, then they will give you kind of a conversion rate for that, and tablespoons and teaspoons, etc. They don't expect you, obviously you're not a genius. So they'll give you a table or a plan to follow if that comes up. However, you do need to know that there's 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. Again, something to just get in your head, try and remember, and try and visualize it. So try and think of like packets of crisps. So crisps aren't very heavy, so you're probably going to get, I can't remember, maybe like 30 grams of crisps. But then if you think like a bag of potatoes, they're usually like 1k 5k kilograms, so they're obviously much bigger in weight. But obviously, like it is with your millimeters and centimeters, the smaller they are, the more there is in them. Okay, so that's the only one that you need to remember in terms of weight. So to convert from one unit to the other, you're going to multiply or divide by 1,000, and it's just going the right way. So that's where you would then visualize your pack of crisps or your potatoes as to if you've gone the right way or not. So just make sure it makes sense once you get to your answer. So to convert grams to kilograms, you're going to divide by 1,000, or if you're going kilograms to grams, you're going to multiply by 1,000. So looking at an example, how many grams are there in 12 kilograms? So what am I going to do this time? So we know we're going to go with 1,000, but am I going to divide or am I going to multiply? Okay, so I'm going kilograms to grams. Yeah, definitely. Well done, Alex. I'm going to multiply. Okay, so grams to kilograms, you multiply by 1,000. Well done, Harry. So 12 kilograms times 1,000 is going to give me 12,000 grams. Okay, so sometimes in the questions there'll be the units in there, but if there's not, you must make sure that you write in how many units it is. So you wouldn't just put in your answer box 12,000, it would have to be 12,000 grams. Okay, so make sure that you are clear on what's grams and kilograms. Also in your working out box, if that helps you whilst you're working, so you don't have to show in your exam when you're showing your working out, like this last part of the answer shows 12 kilograms times 1,000. You don't need to do that, but if that helps you in your head to work that out, then you do that. But you're not going to lose marks, or as long as you show 12 times 1,000 and your answer comes out at 12,000, and then your final answer, if there's a different box to put that in, you add in your grams, then you'll pick up the marks. But also if you want to write your working out and then in brackets or beside it work changing from grams to kilograms, if that helps you, if you want to put in before you start working it out, grams to kilograms is times by 1,000, whatever helps you, however you like to see it or like to work it out, then go for it. You will not lose marks for more stuff you put in it, unless obviously you timesed or multiplied by 100 or 10, then you'd obviously get it wrong because you've gone with the wrong amount. Okay, so looking at a practice for that. So we're not going to do the whole thing. So this is an example of a recipe for an apple cake. So if you are bored, take a picture, you can make yourself an apple cake. So obviously you've got a list of ingredients. There's quite a few ingredients on here. Like I said earlier, they're not going to expect you to know ounces to grams and teaspoons, etc. So we will just go with obviously what we know, plus they've actually given us a table to follow on here anyway, so there's a key that we can follow. So in the ingredients itself, you've got ounces, you've got teaspoons, obviously just the eggs on their own, they haven't changed anyway, and then you've got tablespoons as well. Okay, so first thing to remember is obviously to follow the key. And if that helps you, write it down on your scrap paper if you need to, and make sure you show all your working out. Okay, so we're going to have a go at this together. So margarine, first of all. So it's the first one on the list. So in the actual ingredients, you've got 3 ounces of margarine. What are we going to do to change that to grams? Okay, so I don't expect you to give me the answer, but just tell me what I'm going to do. So looking at the key, if I'm going from ounces to grams, what do I need to do? So I've got 3 ounces at the moment, and I need to get that into grams. What am I going to do? Okay, so if you're looking at the key, you've got 1 ounce is the same as 25 grams. So if the margarine in the recipe is 3 ounces, I need to do 3 times 25. Okay, so you take how many ounces you've got, you use your key. Well, one of them is 25 grams, so I need 3 lots of those. So it's 3 times 25. It's going to give us 75 grams. Okay, and you would then do that exactly the same for the other grams. So for example, the grams soft brown sugar, that is 6 ounces, so I do 6 times 25. The plain flour, 4 times 25. The wholemeal flour, 6 times 25. Okay, just follow the recipe. So looking at the mixed spice, because that's slightly different, it's now looking at teaspoons. So the one thing I would make sure that you guys are careful of, first of all, teaspoons and tablespoons, they look very similar. It's quite easy to get those two mixed up. So make sure you're 100% sure you know which one you're looking at and which one you're working with. So in this case, you've got mixed spice, which is a half, so you might not see it very clearly, but it is a half a teaspoon of mixed spice. So if we look at our key, 1 teaspoon is the same as 5 grams. So what am I going to do if I've got a half a teaspoon? How am I going to figure out how many grams that is? So a slightly different calculation on this one. So obviously you can't put in a half on a calculator. So yeah, you could do your 5 divided by 2, or you could do 0.5 on the calculator times 5. Okay, well done. So that's going to give you 2.5 grams. And then you obviously so on, you do exactly the same. So the cinnamon would be exactly the same answer because it's already got a half on there. So the next one we're going to look at is the chopped mixed peel. Okay, so in the recipe, the chopped mixed peel is 1 tablespoon. Okay, so slightly different with this one. If we look at the key, it says 1 tablespoon is the same as 3 teaspoons. So now we kind of need to do like what they did earlier in the video. They did like 2 lots of conversions. So this is kind of what we're going to do now. So because we need to get this peel into grams, and at the moment it doesn't tell us tablespoons into grams, what do we need to do? So we've got 1 tablespoon. What is that equal to? Yeah, so we need to multiply it by 5. Yeah, so we need to figure out that 1 tablespoon is the same as 3 teaspoons. So we know that if we've got any teaspoons, we times it by 5. Excellent. So yeah, 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So then we're going to do 3 lots of 5. It's going to give us the answer of 15 grams. So well done. So that's just an example. That I would say is probably more, that will definitely be a level 1 question. So you wouldn't necessarily get that come up in your level 2 exam. However, there will definitely be something to do with recipes in there at some point and conversions. So it's just good to look at the differences of where there's a key in there and where you're expected to remember. So in this occasion, you won't remember, but just remembering your 1,000 grams is 1 kilogram. Okay, so we're then going to look at capacity next. So there's 3 in here. So you've got milliliters, centiliters, and liters. Okay, so the one bit of advice I'd give you on this one is it's very, very similar to obviously your lengths. So in terms of milliliters, it's very similar to millimeters. Your centiliters is very similar to centimeters. And then your litre is very similar to your metre. Okay, so as you can imagine, it's just working in your tens, hundreds and thousands again. So it's knowing and getting in your head that there's 1,000 millilitres in 1 litre and that there's 1,000 centilitres in 1 litre. And again, like I said, with the crisps and the potatoes and like the difference in sizes, just try and visualize it in terms of like a can of Coke. How much is there in a can of Coke compared to a whole, a massive bottle of Pepsi or Coke that you can get from the supermarket? So then you're looking at a litre bottle or a 2.5 litre bottle, depending on the size that you're getting. They're obviously much bigger. So just try and visualize where you can. Okay, so to convert your milliliters to your liters, you divide by 1,000, or you convert your centiliters to liters. That's meant to be multiplying. On obviously the first part. So then converting your liters to milliliters, multiplied by 1,000, and then your liters to centiliters. Okay, so it's just looking at what it is that you are, what way you're going. Okay, so it's exactly the same as your length. So you can write capacity using decimals. For example, a bottle of liquid could be 12,050 milliliters, or you could write it as 1 litre, 250 milliliters. This is obviously the same as 1.25 litres. Okay, so just use whatever works for you guys, and whatever preference that you use. But again, on your exam, just write it in if you need to. Write in your meters, your milliliters, and your liters, just so it's clear in your head as to what it is. So looking at an example, so how many litres are there in 850 milliliters? Okay, so if we're converting your litres to 850 milliliters. So litres to milliliters, yeah, multiplying by 1,000. Okay, so milliliters to litres, you dividing by 1,000. So your 850 divided by 1,000 is 0.85. So remember, always putting in that units at the end to show your answer. Okay, so they are really confusing, so that's why you need to get it in your head as to what way you're going. Are you multiplying, dividing? Because it's really hard to get that in and get that embedded in your head. So that's why I'm saying keep writing them down, write them over and over again, have them up as post-it notes somewhere so you can just familiarize yourself with them all the time. Okay, so just looking at how this looks in an example, showing you like some working out. Looking at currency in particular. So this is obviously the one that I told you you won't need to remember because it's terrible, it changes all the time. But I just wanted to show you an example that could come up and how you would convert between them. It's very similar to the recipe, really. They're going to give you a key to follow, and it's just making sure that you show what you're working out and you follow that.
Calculate conversion rates for functional skills questions. So I'm just going to write that title on the board here. Conversion rates. So with these type of questions, they're never something that you need to learn. You never need to know what the actual number translations are because they'll always be given to you in the question. So we'll start off with a really common type of one of these, and that's when you look at currency rates. So, and this is useful obviously for real life situations as well. So if we look at a rate, like I say, this will be given to you in a question if it did crop up. If we have a rate of £1 equals 1.35 euros, and quite often, just to highlight this even more, it will be in a box, so it does suggest to you that this is a given rate. Now, this will be in a scenario, perhaps you're going on holiday and they say that you've got £500 to spend. You're going on holiday to Spain and you want to know how much you're going to have in terms of euros. So we need to convert that into euros using this above rate. Into euros. Now with these questions, what's important is this number on the right hand side that isn't equal to 1. You never need the part of the conversion rate that is 1, so £1. And that is the same sort of story for any conversion rate you have. You'll always have 1 of a unit equals a number like I've just highlighted that isn't 1. And the reason for that is if you times or divide any number by 1, it will just stay as the same number. So it's kind of irrelevant in that sense. What we're needing is this 1.35 side. And in terms of converting that £500, we're either going to do 500, as I say, times that 1.35 figure, or we're going to do 500 divide by that 1.35 figure. Now, to some of you, it may be obvious as to which one this is going to be, but in terms of learning this method from scratch, we always advise that you do both of these calculations first, because then you can check from your answers which one makes the most sense and which one will be correct. So for that top one, if we get the calculator up, that's 500 times 1.35. So we get 675 exactly. So that'll be, remember, 675 euros, because we've been going from pounds to euros. And then for the bottom one, 500 divided by 1.35. So type that in. So that gives us quite a long and nasty number, but when you get a number like that, it's always worth rounding it to 2 decimal places, especially when you're looking at money, because that'll work out as euros and cents or pounds and pence. So 370.37 we can round that down to. So it's 370.37 euros. So like I say, we've got 2 answers now, but only one of them can be correct. And the reason I've said to do both ways to check is if we go back to our original rate, what this is telling us in essence is that euros are always going to be a higher value than pounds. So our answers need to fit with that. So we need to look at which line fits in line with that. In the first one, euros are indeed a higher value than pounds. So that's going to be the correct way to do it. In the bottom one, the euros are a lower value than the £500. So that literally doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. So to work out this question, all we had to do was 500 times 1.35, and that gave us the value in euros. We'll look at another example of this as a different type of conversion rate. So this time we're going to do 1 foot in terms of length equals 0.305 meters. This time we're going to start with meters and convert into feet. So we'll use 15 meters. I say we'll change that into feet. And again, some of you may think it's obvious which way to do this. But as I said before, if you're not 100% confident, calculate it both ways first to check your answers. So that first one, we always use the number that we're changing from first. So it'll be 15 meters times by 0.305. As I say, you can essentially ignore the 1 because it doesn't do anything to the number. We're going to use this side of the equation. So we can do 15 times 0.305, or we can do 15 divided by 0.305. And just while we're on that, make sure, as I say, that the 15 side always comes first and we divide by the 0.35, because if we do it the opposite way round, 0.305 divided by 15, we'll get a very different and a much smaller number. So it's important that this conversion number always comes first when we're doing divides. So if we get the calculator back up, we can work both of these out now. So the first one, again, 15 times 0.305. Oh, I've put in 5 there by accident. 15 times 0.305. That gives you 4.575. So that is going to be 4.575 feet. And for the bottom one, we're going to do 15 divided by 0.305. So that gives you, again, a really long number, but we can round it to 49.18. So 49.18 feet. Okay, so now we refer again to this original conversion rate. If we look at that, what it tells us is that feet always have to be higher than meters. So which one of our two answers fits that? It's going to be the bottom one. So this feet number is higher than the 15 meters that we had over here. So that's the correct way to work it out. As you can see, this example, it worked out that it was a divide, not a times. So as I say before, if you're not sure, just do the calculation both ways, and that should help you get to the correct answer. And that's the end of this tutorial on conversion rates.
Okay, so the most important thing to take from that is, so although we went through distances earlier, there was a reason why there wasn't any feet in there, because you're not expected to remember that. So it's really good to see that as an example, because sometimes they do get you to do that, and that's where you'll then have a key to follow as well. Like obviously they've given there, so there'll be a conversion to do it. It's a really good example of what he's shown, is to do it both ways and then look at it logically, which is why I was saying earlier about visualizing things, looking at your final answer and kind of visualizing, well, does that look like a logical amount for a Coke bottle, or it depends if you're working at a drink or whatever, or a recipe, does that look like a logical amount? So use common sense when you're looking at your exam, at your end figures. And so yeah, so you're not expected to remember how many feet are in meters, which is why it wasn't covered earlier, but you could have something like that come up in the exam. Okay, so final part of the session today is to see what you've learned, and see if you've retained any of the information. So you can get your Kahoot app ready. Alex, you can write down your answers as normal, and we can go through them afterwards. So the pin for today will be on the screen shortly. So 2509604. Right, Harry's first in and Chantel's in. Excellent. So we'll get started because Alex can't access. So first question's coming up. Question number 1. Which of the following are you not expected to know? Okay, yeah, so we've just covered it in the video. You're not expected to know currency because it's a variable amount. So they'll always give you a key, whereas you're going to expect it to know time and how many minutes are in an hour. You're going to be expected to know weight, how many grams are in a kilogram, and you will expect it to know well, weight and capacity are the same thing. Okay, so so you've got that right. Well done, Chantel. How many minutes are there in 1 hour 30? So some quick maths for you there. So yeah, 1 hour 30. So we know there's 60 minutes in an hour. Add on your 30 minutes, 90 minutes. Excellent. Well done. Well done, Chantel. How many centimeters are there in a meter? Okay, so remember centimeters to meter. Think of those rulers at school. You've got that ruler at school, which is 30 centimeters. You've got the really thin stick, which is 1 meter. How many of those 30 centimeter rulers are there? There's roughly 3. The closest, that means there's 3 times 30. Closer to that is 100. Okay, so obviously in there I did have 10, 100 and 1,000. But that is definitely one of the most important ones that you need to remember, because probably one of the most likely ones to come up. Okay, so meters and centimeters, there's 100. So you got it right. Okay, well done, Harry. Okay, to convert from grams to kilograms, you need to do what? I was nice on this one and I didn't go multiply or divide. So I just went with divide on all of them. But yeah, so remember there's 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. So I need to divide by 1,000. So you got it right. Well done, Harry. Last question. See if Chantal can catch up. If the conversion rate is 1-to-1, will I need to show my working out? Yeah, good. Bit of a trick question there. Obviously, you mentioned it in the video. If you've got 1 and it's still at 1, then there's nothing to convert, is there? Because it's going to equal the same amount. So that won't come up in the exam. They're not that nice. It will be £1 to $1.35 or whatever it is. However, yeah, there's no working out to show, but you may want to, in your working out box, you know, you would state the obvious. So you would put £1 is the same as $1. No working out needed. So yeah, excellent. You both got it right. Let's see who was quickest. See if we were able to catch up. No, well done, Harry. You've won today's quiz. So excellent work there. Okay, so recap on what we've done today. So we've obviously gone through the different conversions. There's obviously 4 main ones that you need to remember. The currency one you don't, but there's quite a lot of information in there in terms of you probably know some of them. Hopefully you know the time ones. So it's basically the making sure that you know the distances, the weights, are the main things that are going to come up, because you're going to have the areas and the perimeters and the volumes where you'll need to convert your distances and your centimeters and your meters, and you're going to have probably a recipe question come up as well, or an amount of, you know, you providing for a party, etc., and needing to convert. Okay, so as always, practice makes perfect. I have attached a worksheet to the invite, and it's literally just practicing all of those aspects that we've gone through today. So just remembering which way you're converting. Are you dividing? Are you multiplying? And are you going by 10, 100 or 1,000? Okay, so make sure you show all your working out. If it helps you, write on the sheet, divide by 100, times by 1,000, whatever it is that you're doing, and then email me a picture or a scanned copy of the work that you do. Any questions based on anything that we've gone through today? Okay, I'll take that silence as a no. So thank you very much for joining and have a good day.